It is 5:31.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're right.
All right, roll call. Commissioner Kachari.
Here.
Commissioner Wolf.
Here.
Commissioner Parker.
Here.
Commissioner Young.
Here.
Commissioner Nemeth.
Here.
Now we'll approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And,
First public.
okay. And now we will open up for our first public commentary session.
Give a little instruction, 3 minutes.
Okay. Just please limit your comments to 3 minutes, and to agenda items only. We'll have a second public comment period at the end of the meeting in which you can address items that are not on the agenda.
Thank you. And also, please speak into the microphone. So everyone, please speak into the microphone so we can all hear. Thank you.
I wrote a book for you, and I'm not going to read the book. I'm just going to read the first couple of things.
Thank you.
Just at those spammers again. I heard in 2019 they're going to shut them down.
So they say.
Very much looking forward.
Thank you.
Okay, so, microphone. I'm probably going to go a little bit over 3, but Stephanie said that's okay, and I promise I'm trying really hard not to. Most of the arguments against what we've been talking about are about not wanting to increase the amount of artisans at the market. So this is kind of frustrating because it's not what we're proposing. It's like if you wanted to get your hair cut a little shorter, but everyone votes no because they don't want you to change the color of your hair. We're not talking about increasing the artisan vendors at all, just us being given the right to choose which specific stalls we take in a fair order after already being at the market. So let's say you want to have a lot of vegetables in your house and not too much cake. So you build a shelf, you label 11 spots for vegetables and 1 spot for cake. Then you go to the grocery store, you buy 9 vegetables and 3 cakes. Take them home, you put 2 of the cakes in vegetable slots. The annual stall list doesn't determine who's at the market. Only who's accepted onto the annual and daily accepted vendor list determines how many of each type of vendor are at the market. It only affects the annual versus daily status, only affects which stalls we pick once we're already there. We're just asking to be allowed to earn at the same rate as everybody else the right to pick the stall we like. This doesn't affect the quantity of artists at the market. The only thing that can do that is accepting or having them retire. So, you know, a case in point, we have this set up so it's just under 10%. 12 of the 144 stalls are allotted to artists, and yet we have 26 artist vendors. I think the number that I just saw in the new one is a little bit different.
I think it's because we're always adding.
Yeah.
So
that was like 16%, which is more than 10%. How did this happen? Because we're trying to limit the amount of artists by making the annual stalls, limiting the annual stalls. Well, it's because that doesn't limit the amount of artisans at the market at all. It only changes which spots we're allowed to take. Maybe this happened because even though we haven't let in any new artists for decades, against all hopes, people from all the other categories have retired at a fast rate, and yet the old craft vendors have stubbornly remained at the market. This isn't true because craft vendors are actually much more likely to pass their stalls down to family members. As we see today, there's 2 people that are being passed down. I can only think of 1 artist that even has a family member participating, which would be Ray. I can't think in my whole time of 22 years of anybody else artist ever passing a stall down. And in the 90s, Maxine accepted crazy amounts of new artist vendors, and we're still dwindling those down. So let's say that's what happened. Well, if what we really want is not to have new artists, what we're doing doesn't make sense, because in these past 2 decades, we have accepted several new artists into the market, despite that percentage of artists being higher than our goal of 10%. Yet there's no rule against new artists. There's no one protesting. There's no one lobbying for a rule, trying to get a rule, nobody objecting to the artists that have been let in. Meanwhile, denying us our right to choose in a fair order, denying us our annual stall assignments, doesn't actually do anything to make us go away or decrease the percentage of artists. We're still coming as daily vendors, 22, and other people longer than me who are still stuck at the top of the daily list. I don't think we should make a rule disallowing new artist vendors, but if that's our goal here, that would be the way to do it. Literally the only way to do it. This idea of not letting, so the only way to do that would be to not accept any new artists until that percentage dips back under the limit. What we're doing now is we're not allowing us to have annual stalls until we dip under that limit, except that doesn't reduce the number of artists or percentage of artists at the market. It only makes it so that we can't choose in a fair order like everybody else, and people leapfrog over us in getting their right to choose a spot. So again, you want a lot of vegetables and not too much cake. You build a shelf, you make 11 spots for vegetables and just 1 spot for cake. That's your annual stall assignment map. But then you go to the grocery store and you buy 9 vegetables and 3 cakes, and you take them home and you put them on your shelf. That's the actual vendors that come to the market. That's your accepted vendors. Do those labeled slots, that annual stall assignment map, mean that you have less cake on your shelf now? No, because you still bought those 3 cakes. It just means the cakes are sad. Okay, and then I would love it if you guys read my other pages. I tried to be clear and concise. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Thanks.
Do we have any other public comments?
Hi, my name is Christine Chuprai, daily vendor, artisan vendor. I have no idea what I missed because I just came to the meeting late. I just want to restate that I've been a member of the market for 24, going on 25 years. My main goal is that, not my main goal, but what I want to reiterate is that I am not looking to expand the amount of stalls that I have. I abide by all of the rules that are set out for the market vendors. I go ahead and attend as often as I can. I make my annual amount of time that I'm supposed to be there. I have established a clientele. I enjoy coming to the market. I support the other market vendors. All I'm asking is that if I have to abide by all of the other rules that all of the other market vendors abide by, why is it that my seniority is ignored when others is honored? And I just want my seniority as a craft vendor to be honored and be able to choose an annual stall when it comes around for allotment like the other annual vendors. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Now we will approve the minutes from January's meeting.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Yeah, we have one presentation.
All right, so we do have a presentation today. To put this in a little context, this body has been exploring ideas and alternatives to go back a little bit more, the building that was approved for the market, the winterization, and the new structure was approved, and it is still our intent to build that building. However, it is on delay for an undisclosed period of time while we reassess budget and where we're getting money to pay for this project. So in the meantime, this commission is exploring other possibilities, just kind of really opening it up a little bit as a conversation. So we have this idea being brought forth by Peter, and Ed Lynn.
Yes.
Can introduce, this is Ed Lynn. You can also introduce yourself too if you want to tell us a little bit about your relationship with the market and your history. But this has been brought to us from Peter and Ed, and something to consider.
Can I say a few words first, too?
Sure.
So part of this came about so we're trying to work through this building and figure out what might work or what might not. And so we've run through a number of budgetary issues, and we'll see what happens long term. But there's a question of, it's either going to go one way or the other, of we're either going to have funds or it's going to work out or not. And it's worth starting to think through alternatives if it doesn't work. And maybe there's a possibility for better alternatives. And so that's where Ed came in, that Ed approached me. Actually there's an article in the Observer, was the Observer, that
Yes.
was mentioning that he had this great idea for a different way to do things that might work out well. So he and I have met a number of times to talk, and it seems to make a lot of sense. There's a lot, as kind of we've said before, that there's a lot of knowledge within this community of ways to deal with things and different ideas. And so it seems worth beginning to explore a plan B that might work better for us or not. And again, it just keep something in the back of our pocket to work in parallel a little bit. And so Ed came up with this idea, and this is his. It's worked. I think it seems a useful one, but he can share with what it is.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you, everyone. Good evening. Over the years, there have been a lot of discussions on the farmers market. When I first moved to town in '77, they were talking about it. So this has been going for a while, and I hope the following will really contribute to that discussion and help move it along towards resolution. Bingo, click. Okay, as you recall, and as Peter just said, in 2016, the City Council approved a plan to basically build a new building on the sand lot, 50 by 80, 4,000 square feet, standalone, which would have had 36 winterized stalls, if I remember correctly. And it would be winterized. That would take it from polar vortex up to meat locker plus or something. It wouldn't be these conditions here. But it proved to be not affordable. So just thinking about it, I went and thought, okay, what might we do? And there are probably 4 goals, objectives in here that are not explicit and laid out, but do underlie it. The first is that anything we should do, or the city should do, or the farmers market should do, should be friendly to the shoppers, i.e., most of the shoppers are along the Detroit Street aisle, and most of the vendors are there too. Now, what came first? I don't care. It just happens that way. And so focus on where the shoppers want to shop. The second one, vendor friendly. This is really a huge logistics issue here, a huge logistics problem. You have on a summer day maybe 70 vendors coming in with trucks and cars and vans filled with produce and other items, unloading, setting up, having hundreds of shoppers come by, and then by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, packing up again, and by 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's all gone. So, that all happens in the span of 10 to 12 hours. That's a huge material flow, and so in any project, I think, that would be done, that would be considered. The third one is that the goal of a robust design, and by that I mean no one in this room really knows where the farmers market will be 10 to 15, 20 years out. This is a very competitive industry. You look even locally, you've had Argus Farms set up in the last 4 years, and they've already had 2 shops, and they are the, quote, farmers, the everyday farmers market. You have Kroger looking at delivering food, and other supermarkets doing the same. You even have Amazon buying Whole Foods, and Amazon, if nothing else, has lots of money to throw at stuff. I said to Peter, they probably have more people involved with frozen peas than the Parks Department has on their payroll. Hyperbole, yes, but they've got a lot to go after this. So we don't know what's going to happen, so any design should be able to respond to whatever does happen, at least minimize throwaway costs. And in that robust design, I would think there should be some improvement of the present infrastructure. The buildings you have now are 80-plus years old. They're not going to last forever. So when do you start renovating those buildings on an ongoing basis? And last, it has to be affordable. That's what's stopped this all so far. So if you look, there's the present state of the market. On the left, the aerial view, and on the right, all 144 stalls laid out. The proposal would start by going to an alternative. Look at this southeast corner, and you would double aisle that one section. Now, please don't look at the roof lines. My photoshopping skills aren't even to the level of nil. They don't exist. So this is true cut and paste. I mean, few aerial photographs, cutting them up, pasting them in. Okay, so the roof lines are not representative. But the idea is that you would have a double aisle. That would probably be a building about 50 by 100 as compared to the present proposal of 50 by 80, and maybe 45 winterized stalls in there, okay? Possible benefits of doing something like this. Let's see, okay. It expands where the shoppers are, obviously. If people are shopping along Detroit Street, obviously, then that's where you're putting your resources. The vendors have access, perimeter access, on the same grade. This is probably the flattest part of the entire farmers market site up there along Detroit. So you would still have a curb, not a wall to deal with. More efficient winter heating. You have a rectangular shape. Last meeting you had a quote in for stringing heaters along the aisle. Very inefficient. This at least would get people into a rectangular space that would be more efficient, and this is supposed to be winterized space. You renovate existing market. You start that process. I mean, I would foresee a new structure right in this building that's twice as wide as the present structure. And the grade is fairly flat for event space. That was a big one driver in the proposal that was approved. And the event space also includes the present restrooms in the office area. If you think about it, the proposal that was approved, if you had a winter event, let's say 30 degrees out with some blowing snow, anyone in a wheelchair would have to wheel themselves out over to the office area, and that slope there is just at ADA limitations, I think. It's right about 5%. And then coming back with a lot of blown snow on them, I mean, is this the way we want to treat people? I don't think so. So those would be some of the benefits. Additional benefits, yeah, it works, good. I think it would be affordable. I'm envisaging a simple structure, no closures yet. I know, Alex, you said you don't want tarps. Okay. If cheap and cheerful won't work, then neither will expensive and glitzy. Okay, that's the running assumption here. And you would have minimal foundation work there because it is fairly flat. Okay, the proposal's flexible because if the market dies, I mean, we don't know what happens if this is the top of the market and they die. Then you just enclose that space. You have the people, and you can just go away. If the market remains steady, you can then start putting in, because it would be assumed that you would design protect for any enclosures. Your structure would be able to support either tarps on the side or garage doors or anything else you want to put out there. You just wouldn't necessarily add them now because we're trying to make this cost effective right now. But if in 10 years or 5 years you said put on garage doors, then get rid of the tarp. So if the market remains steady, you can, your present status is affordable, and you can gradually improve that if you want. If, however, the market grows, then you would just expand the structure, bring it down, double aisle the entire Detroit Street shed area. Same thing, double wide all the way down, and you would have you would probably have about 10,000 square feet then of inside area, okay? Somewhere around there, okay? Now, Peter and I were once playing on what might you do with all that. You know, the roof, we're just assuming a simple roof right now, but, you know, Peter brought up an elevated park up there if you wanted to do a boardwalk enclosure and a flat roof. Yeah, I'm just trying to see if this is affordable to start with, and then if it is, what can you do additionally? So, let's see. Did I go back? Wait a minute there. Did I miss something? Okay, let me
Before
go back one more.
There you go.
Okay, yeah, I'm good. Okay. So, the goals I put out at the beginning. Shopper-friendly, focus on Detroit Street aisle. Yep. Is it vendor-friendly? Ease of logistics. I'm sure it's all on one plane, which should help the all-in-one grade, which should help the logistics. Robust design, flexible, adaptable, scalable. I believe so. And affordable, I would think yes. I'm talking simple structure, not a lot of foundation work. And if that's affordable, then what else might you want to do on top of that? Or if that's not affordable, not much else probably would be, okay? And you can find that out easily, early. So next steps might be, okay, a high-level costing. If you have somebody who's put up metal warehouses for their whole life, you can probably bring that person in and in one afternoon get a fairly good estimate of what the steel structure would cost. And you get somebody who's been pouring cement their whole life, you find out what the footings and cement work would cost. And then if you are at that point, $1.5 million, stop. Don't go any farther. If you're at $400,000, well, then what else might you do? After that, one of the first things I think would be helpful to do is go talk to the vendors. Given certain areas, what would be the best way for you to set up your stalls? As far as the whole logistics part of it, the bringing in the stuff, the taking out the stuff. How would that best work for you? Where would the best entry points be? Okay? With all that, you could probably lay out a couple of scenarios, okay, and associated costs. We could do, let's say, a half an aisle for $500,000, a full aisle for a full $1 million, although I would think that the full aisle would cost a lot less because you've already got your design, you're just replicating it there. And that is really the flattest part of the entire farmers market structure. And then you would then be able to decide, okay, which scenario to pursue then? What might we do here? So that's basically it. It's fairly simple, but questions, comments?
I had a question about the design. So
Yeah.
are you envisioning end walls on
Yes.
this parallelogram that is created?
Yes.
Okay.
Imagine if you were putting up a warehouse, you would have your load-bearing walls on the outside, okay? And it would be the warehouse without the walls in there, just the support beams.
Oh, so no walls then?
No walls, no.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, the idea is you could put walls eventually on it
Later on.
for
Yeah.
either
Okay.
tarp initially or have some sort of enclosure in that TBD, but at least design it so it could accept it. Because there's a question of the current design doesn't necessarily admit that. And maybe without more engineering, based on the engineering surveys that were done before. And so do you build something that's future-proofed to have those versus not having it at all? So.
I would think when you would do the initial high level, you would bring the person and said, okay, assume I've got outer walls that are load-bearing. I want beams that would be able to support either closures or tarps or anything else. But for right now, leave it open. We'll assume tarps. And if that is affordable, well, what would it cost to maybe add on some closures here or there, or build more of it and then do the closures 3 years down? A couple of years ago, the farmer's market, they had a wedding there, and they had some really nice tarps that were Palladian windows, and they looked really nice. And it wasn't this blue stuff you see on roofs being redone. So, you know, it might not be optimum right now, but it might help to get you to where you want to go.
Could you go back to the picture, just for reference?
Yeah,
of
okay,
your
if I can
layout?
figure that out, I think I can. Okay, which,
Sure, that one.
That one?
Yeah,
that's the full.
right, the full
Okay.
extension. Well, you know, I appreciate your creativity, and, you know, I think that this addresses a number of issues in a good way. You know, the grade issue is one thing that certainly contributed to the, you know, high cost in the other project. And I like that, you know, you're working with a more rectangular shape. So when I think about heating and enclosure, I think, well, we can heat just all this linear feet of hallway that we have essentially, or we could heat a rectangle, and so that makes a lot more sense to me. Some of the issues that I see are, you're eliminating a lot of vendor parking with this layout, and I just don't, you know, that's just going to be a problem that, you know, we'll have to deal with, and, you know, probably won't sit well with a lot of vendors. And it also creates a new and unique layout that we've never had at the market of back-to-back vendor stalls, which is another thing. I don't know that many people will go for that. Most people are used to either having their truck immediately behind them or just open sidewalk. So that would be, you know, something new to contend with.
Have you calculated out how many spaces, have you calculated out how many shop or car spaces have vanished with this?
Well, yeah, you could just do a rough one, okay? You look at that and say, okay, you're extending it about, right now, the president's shed from drip line to drip line is 24 feet. So if you say, I'm taking out another 24 feet, let's call it 30 feet, that's 3 parking spaces, 10 feet wide, and you'll be taking 3 parking spaces out right about there, another 3 parking spaces there, another 3 parking spaces there, and another 3 parking spaces there. So that's 12 parking spaces. However, you have to remember, by doing that, you have gained you retained the 16 new parking spaces you have in what used to be the Sandlot,
Yeah.
the former Sandlot.
Yeah, I think parking is more of a limiting factor, or it's definitely more of a
Yeah.
limiting factor in the summertime, in which the Sandlot is not used for parking anyway.
Yes.
So, because there are vendors there, so. And I think the way the parking spots are drawn, I know you've just cut and pasted from the market map here, but those
Be hard to
6
park.
will not, that won't happen. I mean, you might fit 2. I mean, these are big trucks. And then the
Yeah.
angle is so challenging, too.
Right.
I personally choose to never park in that area because it's so hard to maneuver. So I think that's a hopeful, you know, just to my eye, fitting in those 6 spots there.
Okay.
So you mentioned that they had a wedding with some plastic curtains,
Yes.
and they had it on both sides of the aisles, or?
Yes.
Okay.
It was about an August wedding or something, it's mostly to keep the
So
birds out.
couldn't we just look into the plastic curtains the way the market is? I mean, it wouldn't be necessary to add on if that's the case.
Okay, yes. Did they have an engineering study to hang them? I have no idea. All I know is that they did have some fairly nice-looking tarps up there.
Right.
Okay, and they were for I think it was an August wedding. So
Okay.
whether they would be suitable enough for winter and the gauge you would want, I don't know.
Sure. Okay,
The point is, they don't have to look ugly.
right.
So I have a question about the roof lines, and I know you just cut and paste that, but I'm trying to envision a roof line using the existing structure and then adding on to it.
You would not.
So there'd be since there's funding to redo the gutters, so there would be the roof line with the gutters and then a new roof line?
No. You would actually go back, let's go back to present state here. You would actually, under this, actually rip out probably all of that and put in a new structure with one roof line, one peak. Because if part of this is, at one point, I would think you need to start to replace an 80-year-old structure. And I'm looking at a very simple structure to replace it. I mean, you look at the present structure, and it looks like two guys, their welding gun, and a shop project with an adult director set. I mean.
Well, it was a
it's not-
WPA project, so.
Pardon?
It was a WPA project,
Yes,
so.
right. And so, it was very simple. And so you would replace it with a very simple structure, but you would also get, since anytime we ask, or is being asked, what can we do with the present structure? Can you hang tarps on it? Can you do this? You're looking at, what, a $40,000 engineering bill or whatever, just start to go into the foundations, because it doesn't sound like there are any drawings for this, or knowledge of what the present structure can or cannot take as far as loads.
So the other thing I'm wondering about as a customer is one of the issues with the farmer's market is the layout is not very conducive, to a lot of great flow of customers going around. So I was just wondering, and I don't have the answer for this because I don't think about space in this way, is by adding on the double aisle, is that going to help any with the customer flow? So it's just a question that I'd like to put out there.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we have an answer, but there are people that could answer that question. So.
Can I say one more thing too about the roof line idea with this? That when I saw this first design, one thing that came to mind, which would be exciting, but I don't know if would be possible, but actually might be less expensive, would be instead of having a pitched roof, having a flat roof. And the advantages of that are many, in that you don't have snow that slides off, so you don't need somewhere to put snow in the winter. You don't need to use the sandlot as a snow capture, and you also don't bomb all the cars on the other side with snow and ice, which makes it pedestrian friendly, so it can hold snow. The other thing with it, if it's flat, it's a lot easier to put solar on there if you want to eventually. You can just put ballasted systems up there. Super cheap, super standard. You could also put a living roof. And again, that could be done incrementally, and that would fit better with the parks mandate, which is for renewable energy, which is for green spaces. It would be something like the High Line in terms of in Manhattan. In terms of you'd have this potentially this large green expanse in downtown. It'd be possible to have that, and that would be a logical place for it. You could have skylights that could punch through that, so you'd have some additional light that comes through too. So you could get a lot of benefits on a really structurally pretty simple thing, and it's just a matter of tweaking. It would be different than the other ones, but it's already going to be different. So there's a possibility of doing something, I think, really beautiful in there versus functional, adequate.
Well, thank you. We do
Holly.
have,
Oh.
I just was going to ask, what do you think? I know you outlined next steps a little bit, but it seems like there would be a need for costing out and getting like a drawing. All due respect to your take on the drawing and your noted limitations, but it does seem like getting an assessment from maybe not a contractor, but someone who could actually assess the build needs, both structurally and money-wise. It seems like that's a next step.
And I would think, people who have been in this business long enough, and I'm really talking about metal structures, start with that, and cement, usually they can walk through there and give you a ballpark figure. And, if you take those two, add on whatever the heating was in the approved structure and a few other things that were in the approved structure, if you're at $1.5 million, you just stop right there. If you're at 350,000, now, because I've seen it done before.
Okay, thank you.
I've actually done it myself, but under different circumstances.
You mentioned, the difficulty, because we don't know what the foundation is like. So I just missed it. Would this be, because it's a new addition, would it require assessing the foundation of the current structure? No. Okay.
I would think you would have a brand-new foundation, because when I'm thinking of a simple structure, I'm thinking of standardized parts, almost. And if the standardized part for a structure is, let's say, 50 feet wide, then that's what you would put in. And right now, we have 16 feet between poles. Maybe standard's 20 feet, okay? So you would wind up putting in new foundations for the whole thing, okay? But that basically, if you're putting in a support post, it's a hole in the ground, few rebars, and pour cement. I'm making it sound simple, but that's about where it is.
Would that change the stall size, like the posts in different places? That's what we base the stall sizes on.
So the question is, would that change the stall sizes? Because if we...
I don't know, but then if you don't have any interior posts, if all your load bearing is on the walls, you can make the stall sizes, well, you got the present 8 feet, 10 feet, but you've got a lot more degrees of freedom there, even if they are back-to-back, than you would right now.
Sorry, any more questions? No, okay. I did want to say, to Holly's point and question about next steps, I think it does make sense to, yes, we would need to price it out, but I think there's also been, this is the first time we've seen this idea, and I think there's a lot of, like we mentioned, pros and cons. I think we need to maybe take time to also think through in a little more depth. If this design is something we want to price out before we jump to that. So, this thinking about flow and how the flow work, and does it solve the problems that we were already facing, all of those questions first. And then as a commission, think, like, if we say, yes, this looks like the best layout, or maybe is there tweaking we can do? As my point.
I guess the other way to do it would be to first see if the price is at all in the ballpark, and if it's out of the ballpark, then I don't know. It seems that if that's the problem, then I don't know how anything else matters if we can't afford it.
That's true. Yeah, they both need to come together in order to be important. Just personally, from trying to get quotes from construction, it takes a long time. I have to get somebody out there. And it's a process. So I would recommend first deciding if this is something we might want to pursue and get a quote for, and then going out and doing that. So maybe at our next meeting, coming back and saying, like, all right, as a commission, this is how we feel about this. Does that sound like a good plan? Yes. Okay, great.
And one last thing, Steffi, when you're talking quotes, there's two different kinds of quote. It's a quote of, well, this is a ballpark. It cost you maybe $300,000, plus or minus 50. And there is also, then there's the quote, this is the quote I will live by and build it for.
That's true.
And so what you're really looking for is the former to see if the latter is even necessary.
Do you have a hard copy of this that you're going to give to us, or?
I don't have one, no.
No?
Is it in the?
I didn't print it out. There's a link online,
Okay.
and I can also print one off for you in the
Sure.
office.
Right.
Just one more point. I'm just thinking of this in the moment. I wonder if it would be helpful for us as a commission in assessing ideas around a winterization project to come up with, like somehow quantify our goals into like a scoring system or a rubric. We have a lot of data from the vendor advisory committee and the, I forget what it's called, customer advisory committee from the past. And if, you know, and I'm willing to work with you on this, Stephanie, like come up with just like a basic scoring system, and we can weight the various goals like vendor access, you know, customer access, location, cost, all these things. And then we can just easily say, how would this project score against, you know, all our priorities for the project? I wonder if that would streamline things.
I think it's a
Sounds like a
really
good
good idea. Yeah, okay. Maybe we can work together on that.
Yeah.
Great.
I was also wondering about, with the organization of space, can city parks help with that, since we're part of city parks? And they just put all that, you know, new crosswalks and everything else like that, and if we're thinking about flow of people,
Do you
crosswalks
mean,
into the,
can they help assess how it might affect the flow? Is that
yeah,
what you mean?
yeah, and I'm
Like
also
a
thinking
study?
about integrating into what the city just already did, too.
They might have someone that has expertise. I think also just thinking about, you know, our experience with the market, and being there week to week, then looking at this map and thinking, okay, well, this is where, I think we also have a lot of experience that we can bring to this if we kind of think through it. Yeah, but I can ask as well.
Because I
Yeah.
think that is relevant too, because I think of the other 6.5 days of the week are largely either unoccupied or kind of under parks purview, and that it could have the possibility to really serve more of their mission if designed right. There's an opportunity for that, and they also might be the ones that are footing a big chunk of the bill. So it seems involving them would be natural.
Well, thank you very much
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
for all your hard work.
So now on to regular business.
Okay, so the artisan discussion, I wanted to continue that. I put in the packet, again, as a reminder, the current rules regarding artisan vendors. Would anyone like me to go over those again as a reminder, or does everyone kind of feel comfortable with how it functions right now?
Okay.
I'm good.
You're good?
I
Okay.
have one quick question, Stephanie. Why does 132 and 12 not add up to 144?
Oh, yeah.
Is it-
Oh, it's 150.
Or is that just a misprint? Because
It's probably a miss.
it's in here too.
132
This
and
goes to
12
144.
equals 144, right?
Yep.
132.
Oh, it's one-
You're right.
Yeah.
You are all correct.
Okay.
Sorry.
What was that?
Strike from the record.
The record reflects.
Oh, yeah, maybe you're thinking of the number of vendors. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Number of vendors does not, because several have more than one stall.
Stalls.
All right, good, and then, yeah, so I included that just as a reminder. Also would like to say, I think my goal, what I would love to see out of this meeting is to talk through it some more and take into consideration public comments, but also, you know, if we as a commission do come up with some ideas that we might like to see before making a decision, I would like to take those back to the market again, share them, see if there's any feedback, come back. I know this is a long process, but I think it's important to take time with it. So I guess what I'm saying is not making decisions today, but if we do come up with a couple ideas we like, I can take that back to vendors and see what their comments are. So the options that we talked about, I tried to summarize, and if I missed any, please add, were, one, just integrating the artisans completely versus keeping the annual stall limit to 12. Another question that we have is, what do we do with the 3 extra currently unassigned stalls? The options being as a one-time only, giving them to the 3 artisans at the top of the daily list that have been dailies for 20-some years. Give half of those to artisans and half to producers, which also might be something we could repeat in the future if we get extra stalls again, whether or not we want to make it a regular thing. Or give them all to producers, which is current practice. Number 3 was allow artisans to select 2 permanent stalls as opposed to 1. Right now, artisans, if they're annuals, can have 1 permanent stall, whereas producers can have up to 3. Another one was letting producers have 4 stalls instead of 3. Increase the minimum number of days the vendors required to attend to maintain seniority, which could encourage stall turnover, but I think also has some other consequences, which if we want to get into that, we can explore it further. And the 6th one was we could add to the market rules that this is something that maybe PMAC comes back to and assesses every few years. Maybe it's a regular thing to assess the vendor makeup, and it is already actually, we do assess, vendor makeup and the types of vendors we want at market, but more in depth, like, are these rules still working for us, I guess. And then I summarized kind of the main opinions we heard. So I guess I would just like to open it up, and if anyone wanted to start with a reaction to any of these suggestions, something that's jumping out at you.
What I struggled with a little bit is kind of trying to understand what our goal as a commission and as a market is. Is it to prioritize beginning farmers, or to keep the mix at a certain level? Or I think for me, I don't know what option is best because I don't know what our real priority is.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to decide, what's our priority here?
I'm really glad you brought that up. I forgot, I did include our mission statement in the packets. I forgot to email it out, but as maybe a starting point. So this was adopted by PMAC in 2008. The Ann Arbor Farmers Market is a setting for contact between area farmers and artisans and the public, where producers of locally grown, raised, and prepared foods and plants can offer their goods for sale directly to consumers. Interaction fosters the sharing of information about food, healthy living, and the interdependence of the built and natural environments. Vendors and their goods are as diverse as the demographic of shoppers. Cultural and economic values of food and craft are further enhanced by related educational and promotional offerings. A positive symbiosis exists with neighboring businesses and the surrounding residential community, and where the farmers market as a venue for and contributor to local sustainable practices is seen operated as a clean, healthy, beautiful, and hospitable physical space that speaks to its intended purpose, a direct link between area farmers' fields and products and our local kitchens and quality of life. There's a lot in there. I don't know if that quite answers our question because there is so much in there.
I mean, there's certainly a focus understandably a heavy emphasis on food, but craft is also mentioned. Yeah, I'm not sure that it entirely clarifies our priorities
I
as a
don't think it
commission.
does. Yeah. And as they should, when they wrote the mission statement, they included area farmers and artisans and the public and tried to
Sure.
be inclusive of everything. So,
So one other question, when, just in seeking a starting place or some sort of guidance, in the input that you get from shoppers, have you received input about the makeup of the market and whether or not shoppers are seeking more artisan vendors or more food vendors, or has there been any feedback from the people coming to market?
mostly we've had requests when people have requested and we've done surveys. More like prepared hot foods people have been looking for. And sometimes I hear requests for more organic options. Also, the question that kind of related when we polled people as to what they bought. The first was vegetables, fruit, and then eggs were kind of the most often purchased.
Which would make sense because there's more vendors that are food vendors than artisan vendors.
Yeah.
So, okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess one thing that, so a challenge that comes with it is this challenge of curation, of how do we or the manager or the market itself self-curate to define what the mix is and what that energy is. And I acknowledge that's a really hard problem, and different people view it differently. So it's not like there's going to be a right answer, or the right answer today will be the same right answer tomorrow. So in that way, just at least for me, when I was framing it as curation, that seemed like, and also the levers that are allowed us right now are, at least as the manager, can allow someone in as a daily vendor or not. And that's it, as far as I know. And then based on their classification, then seniority dictates everything. And that's the way the structure is written, and it's kind of written for a long time that way. I personally don't think that's maybe the greatest way, but I also don't know of a better way. And so trying to figure out with that, I've been thinking about what alternatives could be. I mean, if this were college admissions or something, it would be like, well, do you look at the whole person? It's like a voting process of there's 3 slots open. Who do we choose to put those slots? Do you just choose the person who's gone to school the longest? Or do you choose the person who, by the peers of the people who are already within the group, get to choose? Is it defined by the micromanager? Is it defined by this board? Is it defined by just an arbitrary set of rules? And all those have problems. But they're all alternative solutions. And in some ways, some of these proposals here are like the first one, is if we make various exceptions and things like that, effectively that's what saying that this board then redecides periodically what that is. And that's what that vote would be for. And again, I'm trying to wrap my head around what path we're going down, and if we really intentionally are choosing that path, or if it's just kind of what's happening today. And maybe that's okay, but just, I don't know, thinking through these options, how the framing of what that is.
Yeah, so my take looking at these options laid out here, I don't really see a need for increasing the limit of annual stalls for either artisans or producers. I think that the lower limit, keeps diversity in our market. I do like the idea of increasing the minimum attendance, and that could encourage stall turnover. I would be, in favor of that change. And I also, opinion number 3 down at the bottom here, that one really speaks to me. So it's sort of addressing like these two sort of gateways we have. There's the gateway when a vendor is accepted to the market, and then there's the gateway which we're discussing change to now, which is getting annual status. And this makes a good point that, while we do try to make a good balance of vendors in the beginning when we take them in, there's no controlling, who goes out of business or retires, and then that affects the makeup too. And so when I read that, I do really feel like, that the current, at least having a set number of artisan stalls and a set number of producer stalls does continue to make sense. I'd be curious to hear from Anne and Christine, you don't have to answer now, but, maybe Stephanie can touch base with you. If the request is that there be a special consideration made because we're in this unique situation with these, 7 stuck daily artisans on the list, or if what you're actually requesting is a change to the market bylaws and this policy. So, maybe that's for you to think about, and you can talk to Stephanie.
I think I can answer that
Yeah.
now. So from having spoken with both of them, I think the request number 1, the ideal situation that they are looking for is to totally integrate the lists so that to get rid of the 12 minimum stall and to all vendors equally.
Okay.
As a second priority is we are in this difficult situation where vendors have been at the top of the day list for a long time. If we can't integrate them completely, is there a way we can at least address these vendors that have been there at the top of the list for so long, for now, for this one time? Is that right?
I'm the 3rd person on the list, so if we give half, which I'm not sure how we would split 3.
Do you want to come up to the microphone?
Just for me personally, that option where we give half to producers and half to crafters, I'm the 3rd person. So if you hate me, choose that. Seriously, and then we're not going to do it until that ever happens again, which I don't know, has it ever happened before?
It happened last year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, if it happens again, but like I woke up in the middle of the night, oh my gosh, that's what they're going to do. And so Christine and Carol will get a spot and then I won't. If we do it that way.
So just to clarify, Anne, you're talking about
Yeah.
the scenario in which unclaimed stalls unclaimed in the move-up process, unclaimed by producers,
Yeah.
then 50, this was a proposal last month, that 50% would go to artisans at the top of the list and 50% would go to the
that's on
next
the
producers.
list, which I don't like. I think
Okay.
all 3 of them should be given to us 3 people who have been sitting at the top of the list, who've been coming for more than 20 years. That would be great. It seems perfect. The newest annual grower has been coming 14 years. I think 14 or 15.
I don't know exactly. It is around 14 or 15.
I've been coming 22, and I'm the 3rd one. Christine and Carol, like 25, 26 years, and we're just sitting there. And, yeah. Oh, and as far as integrating everybody, I just don't understand, since it won't affect, so again, like I said, all this stuff, but then you guys are still talking about the mix of vendors. Can anybody explain how the annual stall assignment has an effect on the mix of vendors who are at the market? Because I can't think of any way that it affects the mix of vendors. So I'm so confused about why we're talking about it in relation to the mix of vendors, because it doesn't affect the mix of vendors. Why are we talking about that in relation? Because that's all we keep talking about it.
Well, so I think Anne, it is a good question, and I think Anne's point is a really good one, that whoever shows up the day of market is gonna get a stall. So the number of, really like the number of artisans and producers that are there on any given day is the daily and the annual lists combined and integrated. I think there is some sort of argument, something to be said for the fact that, people retire, they leave. The annual lists, we know for those are vendors that have been there longer. We know they're going to show up at least 15 times a year, so we're more confident about the fact that they are, like when I'm thinking of the makeup of the market, the 144 stalls, okay, those vendors, I can count on that they're gonna show up. The dailies, when we admit them, we don't know, are they gonna come once, are they gonna quit right away? So it's a little harder to, when we're admitting new vendors and trying to think about the balance of product, to know when you bring on a new vendor, how are they really gonna fit in and affect that balance? But that doesn't entirely dissuade Anne's argument for the fact that anyone who shows up.
Do you know that I'm going to be there 15 times a year?
Right.
I'm a daily, right?
Right.
It's not just the annuals, it's that you can count on these 20-year and longer vendors.
Yes.
Right, regardless of whether you've been given that status.
Yeah, so again, like Anne's point too, that the ones that have been there a long time, we know they're gonna come. I think what becomes then more important to the argument is what Holly, brought up earlier. Another question is, what is the primary mission of the market? So you can argue it's just very gray, trying to keep the balance of this type of product to this type of product to this type of product. I think another factor in this is if our mission is more to, promote these newer beginning farms that are moving up, does it make sense to reserve more annual stalls for them? Because it helps them establish their businesses so they can grow and take more stalls. Or, are we as the market wanting to integrate the artisans completely into that?
I think we're good. I think we have a nice mix of people right now where it's at. I think that when they talk about the mix of vendors, I think what everyone's thinking is like just to try to establish so that things kind of stay the same for the future.
But how does that do that?
What do you mean?
How does making someone an annual or daily affect whether
No.
they come in the future?
It doesn't. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about when we talk about how many vendor, annual, or not annual, but how many artisans there are, craft people, and how many farmers. That should stay somewhat where it's at, I think. So you have a good point, though, yes.
Which I'm not disagreeing with. And can anyone tell me any way that gets controlled other than acceptance/retirement?
Well, I do think that something that's important to point out is that, so gateway number 2, this move-up process is written into our bylaws. There are numbers associated it with the farmer makeup, the vendor makeup, there's 12 and 132. The process, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, the process of decision-making around accepting or not accepting applications, there's no rubric written for that. It's just the manager's interpretation of what's happening at the market. The manager position is one that has turnover. We don't know who's the manager in 5 to 10 years. And so there's less security with that gateway. And maybe we could reinforce that with some new, something written into the bylaws policy-wise about accepting applications and vendor mix if we wanted to, just saying.
And I think one other group that we don't hear from, at least to this thing, is that if we do advance the 3 artisans forward, that those will come at the expense of 3 producers, which would not be advanced. And I haven't heard from them in terms of that they have been expecting for maybe 15 years to finally be at the top of the list, and then they get bumped back for an undetermined amount of time. And that, not that their needs are more or less, but that could feel extraordinarily unfair to them too, in terms of the artisans knew, the vendors knew when they got into this situation long ago that this is the rules, and that we're hoping that things would go a certain way. And then if we suddenly go about changing that around to create different people in different orders, it's not without cost to other people. And so I don't know how they feel about that, but I just
Well, I did address it in my meeting, in my letter last month, which is that they already pick after us now. We're picking ahead of them now, so it wouldn't change in that way. And also, but it would delay them by maybe 1 year. or maybe 2 years, or some of them maybe 3 years. But for us, what has happened is we're delayed 10 years, and we're looking at an endless, vast expanse of time. I've been coming and setting up since I'm 25 years old. I'm 24 years old. I'm 46. So, you know, how does their right, like you said it didn't, but you know what I mean? They already pick after me now, so it wouldn't be like they go backwards. And it might delay them by 1 or 2 years if you look at the logistics of how it would happen if you gave the 3 of us or the 7 of us the next stalls to come out. But if you don't change things, I'm looking at 22 years, I'm looking at, 7 years and on and on and on with no respite ever in sight.
I guess, Stephanie, the one other thing that was bothering me is the absolute numbers of stalls. And so if we're thinking about a mix of a market, would it be good to think about percentages of stalls, 90% for food producers and 10% for artisans, instead of the absolute numbers? With if the stall numbers change at the market, if there's expansion or if it contracts, then that could actually be in place no matter what happens at the market. So just another, instead of the absolute numbers, just tweaking that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's a good suggestion. I think if our number of permanent stalls ever were to change, we would probably look at it as a percentage. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a hard question, and I don't think. I mean, I think it's clear there's no easy solution. I don't think we've eliminated one of our. I feel like, well, before I say that, I agree with Alex that I think allowing annual producers to select up to 4 stalls is probably not the best use of our stalls, seeing as there are so many other interests involved.
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we've eliminated one of the options. Okay, well, I think.
Could we also talk about 5 in terms of the minimum number of days? Because there seemed to be some traction for that.
Yeah, so, and in the interest of time, sorry, I just want to be mindful. Yeah, let's talk about that and then maybe continue this discussion next meeting. There are some pros and cons to this. Again, Anne actually had some good points. Raising the minimum 15 to say 20. If more vendors then come 20 because they want to remain in the market, are they coming with little to no product and just kind of there taking up spaces? And also this works well seasonally because vendors come 15 times like during the season when they have a lot of stuff. When they're not there, then another vendor that's below them can have that spot. So it is nice that that spot is open for somebody that might want it when they're not there. So the question is and I think this is getting at kind of what you're saying is, could it backfire and a lot of people just come more and then push out people? Or would, more like we hope, maybe the ones that are sort of on the fence about coming, they retire? Yeah, I don't know.
I think you'd have some of both,
Yeah.
and the outcome might not be good.
Okay.
It's helpful to hear some of the repercussions that
Yeah.
are not obvious.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that either, but thank you. It's a good point.
I wondered too if you could, if it's not too hard, come up with a list of which vendors you think that would apply to, both annual and daily, who are coming minimum, maximum 15
Right.
times.
That's a good idea.
It'd be helpful to hear from some producers. I find it really helpful to hear your viewpoint and experience. And I'd really like to hear from some producers too, just in terms of what their experience has been and how they would forecast this affecting their experience at market.
You want John at the meeting?
No, I think what would be helpful is producers that are on the
Producers.
daily list.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that would be good. Maybe we can identify one or two that want to come speak from that viewpoint
Yeah.
next time. Okay, great. Yeah, sorry. So we didn't, I think this is great. We've made some progress. We're not going to come up with anything today, but you know, those are some good questions, and we'll go back and find that out. All right. So, yes, Madam Chairman, what is next?
We'll discuss transfer of seniority.
Okay, we have two applications. Let's just start with, we can start with Schwartz. This is similar to last year's. They fit all of the requirements for transfer except the timeliness. The application was submitted. That was because I was on maternity leave. So it's going to his wife. So if this is something, I just need a motion and a second.
I motion to accept.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and the second one, Blandowski, this was after the passing of Ray Blandowski. This to his daughter Donna wants to take over the stalls and the business. They meet all of the requirements.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. I did include, oh, sorry.
Market improvement projects.
Market improvement projects. I included a little more detailed budget and timeline.
That's great.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we can really know what we're talking about here. So if you look at, it's in your packet, what the original estimate was, and then the two bids, what those ended up, what the shortfalls were after those bids, and then where we ended up. So the final total was about 1.5 million, and the shortfall was, from the original estimate, was about almost 634,000. And that was, I think, sort of to inform us on the scope of the projects we're looking at now. Does anyone have any questions about that?
I guess my question is thinking about going forward. You had mentioned that there may be a rebid again?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so for the building, the next step is to rebid. So then we'll have a third category on here. Yeah, but as you can see, we can see the sources where this funding is coming from. So I think developer contributions, the DDA, millage, and market funds. A lot of those are still available, or even if they're not, or would have to be reapplied for, but still a good possibility we would get them if we reapplied. Yeah.
The additional funding sources, so that's the exact figure of the shortfall on bid number 1.
Yes.
So was that, I'm just trying to remember the history of it. Was that Sarah trying
Yes.
to come up with the difference
Yes.
to meet that bid? Okay.
Mhm. Yep. So Sarah, after we got the first bid in, and there was a shortfall, looked for more funding and was able to find sources for the shortfall. But then it was rebid, and then it was over what the original shortfall was. Okay. So I think this can inform our conversation going forward, but I'll just keep this handy for next time.
It's really helpful, thank you.
Good.
Yep.
Also, the electric heating bid I included, we received, it was, see, 79,736. This is to install electric radiant heaters in the first, that first section, like we talked about, yeah, along the main aisle. So now that I have that as sort of a comparison, we're looking into costs of installing solar to possibly cover, well, hopefully the whole aisle, but find out how that would compare. And there's grants and stuff out there for it, so we're exploring that right now.
Great,
Okay.
thank you.
Mhm.
And now we'll have our market manager report.
Great. Gotta find where it is. Okay, really quick. So the city council voted to approve the bid to install the new gutters. So our timeline to install is in April, and that final cost ended up being $29,099, which is coming from millage. The city is working with the DDA to repave the small parking lot between Carytown and the market. So just like our big one got repaved, our little one's getting repaved before Wednesday market starts. So they'll do it during the week, between Saturdays. The Detroit and 5th and Detroit construction is going to continue next year. The estimate is to have that completed by early July. Market to chef, we are, basically Argus started a very similar program that the market had last year and is continuing it. So we are working with Argus to try to integrate the programs. So I'll have more next time on that. We're adding a kids' day on the first Wednesday of the month, May through October. And we'll be participating in MIFMA's Market Metrics program this year. So they're trying to get all the markets to collect the same data in the same way, so we can compare markets across states and across the state. So we will be doing that.
Great.
Okay.
Now we will open up our second public comment period.
Can you come to the microphone?
Trying to get it done in under 3. And we own Human Electric Hybrids, which is an electric bike store in Ypsilanti. And we recently, just this month, moved a bunch our cargo bikes, both electric assist and non-electric, to Carytown. A cargo bike is a bike that is designed to carry a lot of weight, people or produce and stuff. And I've got some pictures I'm going to hand to everybody so you know what I'm talking about. And this falls under the market mission of symbiosis with neighboring businesses. What we would like to do is find out if you can think of any ways in which farmers, the vendors might be able to use a cargo bike. We're willing to loan one of ours. If you look at the picture at the bottom where it says our Cargo L, that's the model of our bike. That's the one that we have in our store right now that we think could be useful to farmers. It benefits us to have cargo bikes being used as much as possible in Ann Arbor. Our mission is to help transform transportation in Ann Arbor by supplying cargo bikes to families and businesses, and I think the farmers market is the perfect place to start. And maybe farmers will love it and they will buy one from us, and we don't know. But to loan one out to be, good citizens and to give people ideas is what we want. The ideas that we have right now are farmers delivering orders to people's cars or to their house, even if they lived in, I've gone to the farmer's market without a way to get everything home. Well, I want to buy flowers, but I can't. But if somebody could deliver the flowers to my house or even to my car if I drove, that would be great. and delivery to restaurants, wherever the produce is going within the city. It could be delivered on a cargo bike, and you just take it and drop it back off when you're done. So what I want to do is ask you to think of ideas. Do you have ideas for how the farmers or the vendors might be able to use the bike? Or bikes. We have two that we could loan out. The one that's at the top that says Our Family. That's the family is the name of the bike model. It's called an Urban Arrow Family. So that's it.
When you say loan, what does that look like?
I'm sorry.
When you say loan, what does that look like?
Oh, Saturdays and Wednesdays, we have the bike outside, wherever works for people. I don't know where it would work for farmers or for you guys, for us to just have it there. And I don't know how people would get to say who gets to use it. I imagine it would go back and forth between a particular place. It would be a bike share kind of situation for the farmers. And it would just be that one or two bikes. And people, I don't have an idea. That's what I'm hoping you guys can think of, if you can come up with a way that they can decide whose turn it is or whatnot.
Are you thinking of like people paying a fee every time they used it one time?
No, we honestly just want to be able to loan it out so that people can see it being used. If it gets to a point where you need more than two, then we can talk about leasing it or renting it out or something like that, because then we'd have to buy another one. We have a limited number that we can actually loan out.
Okay.
Stephanie, real quick question. I know there's little carts at the market that customers can use. How do you work those and people taking them and returning them and things like that?
We have them leave their ID in the office, and then they can borrow the cart. And when they're done, they come back and get their ID. So maybe something like that.
Kim didn't really hit on it. I'm Jim Summon. Kim's my partner in the thing. I don't know if it's obvious or not, but the object is to remove vehicles from the area, right? As many as possible. And to make it, and that's just going to make it more accessible for everyone. Everyone will have a better time, maybe a little bit less diesel exhaust running around the market, at times. So that's really all I had to add. That kind of pushes just to get as many fossil fuel vehicles out as we possibly can.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just have some brochures for any of you who are interested after we wrap it up and grab one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Sorry, I have to leave.
Yeah, I think we're done. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry. So I just wanted to address, will this change the artisan thing? Will it affect the mission of the market? Will it hurt the ability to recruit new local farmers? You guys, let's just look at reality, like really real reality. If a local farmer comes in, they're going to wait right now for 15 years to get an annual spot. How will denying a few of us the right to get our annual spot that we've really earned, just like everybody else, really affect our ability to support local farmers? In reality, is it really going to do that? And it just isn't. And it also isn't going to change how many artists. It's not going to add any more artists. It's just not. It's just going to let us pick which stall we want. That's all it's doing, letting us pick which stall we want. And you were talking about like that you recognize that we wanted to be in the same area every week. That's true, but it's really much more complicated. I just want to be able to pick my own stall, and we all do, because I don't want the same stall in the same area if it's empty because no one else is there. I don't want to be in that stall because there's a waterfall, because the gutter's broken. I don't want to be here because it's 100 and the sun's going to be beating down. I don't want to be next to that coffee guy because he ran out of the thing, and you know how it goes, and it wrecked $150 worth of my stuff. So I try not to be next to him. Or that person's table always goes over 3 inches, and then my table won't fit. I just want to be able to pick, and that's all that this would do. It wouldn't prevent any new local farmers from coming, and might delay their getting an annual stall from 15 years to 16 years. It's really not gonna hurt anybody. No customer's gonna notice a change. Please, let's look at reality and how this will really play out, please. It's just something we want so bad, and it's such a little thing, and it's been so long. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we're ready to adjourn.
Is there any other public comment?
Yes.
Were there any other public comment?
Any other public comments? Sorry. All right. Yeah, go ahead.
My name is Nancy Willoughby, and I've been an artisan at Market for 32 years. And
Can you speak in the microphone?
I'm blessed that I have an annual stall, and I was hoping to. I liked Lisa Young's idea of going with percentage for artisan, and if it goes to 10%, that's 14.4 people. Maybe it could be 15. Just want to support that at least to have you consider the 10% for artisans. And I really appreciate Ed Lynn's taking time to create this idea for improvement in the market. I just want to remind people that there will be some people concerned about how that's going to affect our sales. Like, will that take a year? Will that take 6 months? And what will we do? So I know you probably have already thought that. But that's mostly just what I want to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? Okay. We need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It is 6:57.
Okay, thank you.